Fashion is about telling stories, but you prefer taking stories and transforming them into fashion?
What we do is quite literal, saying that each collection is like a book. It's like we're creating our own library, collection by collection, but with the same main character in each of the books, a character that keeps evolving. Just like our label, and that's wonderful. There's always a story at the heart of it. That's what's interesting, being able to ask things like, what's the state of masculinity today?
Louis-Gabriel Nouchi is an avid reader. Each of his collections is inspired by a novel or essay. For his menswear summer 2024 collection, he chose A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood. Set in the USA in the 1960s, the book tells a story of 24 hours in the life of a gay university professor who loses his partner in a tragic car accident. Trapped in a repressive society, how can he express his grief? How can he find meaning without his soulmate? So, how to translate these questions into a fashion collection?
What we wanted to show was a tension between the appearances and the substance of men in society, the fact that men are able to express their emotions as well. There's a duality between very structured shoulders with really cinched in waists. We have many clothes that expose the back because our backs are a body part that symbolize vulnerability, and it's not a part we show a lot. We tried to show a fair bit of skin, almost more like you'd see in women's wear. There are some exposed shoulders. You can see sometimes some hip, so not often body parts that you get to see.
Yeah, but usually it's not allowed.
It's not banned. We're here to try things, break with convention. That's what we do at LGN. I think that masculinity in general has a lot of growing to do. And when I speak about masculinity, I'm not necessarily talking about sexuality. We're speaking about male sensuality. Looking around, I couldn't see myself represented in what was being offered. And so it's really quite something to realize that, well, me, for example, I'm gay and Jewish. But that doesn't define me as a man. If I want to be sporty, if I want to be sexy, sensual, or just hang out at home in my pajamas, well, I can. There are always many sides to my personality, and there are very few labels that offered me that freedom.
Mark Bryan also loves doing away with established sartorial codes. A robotics engineer by training, an influencer, and also straight, he often chooses to wear skirts and heels in his daily life.
I try to dress masculine above the waist and feminine below the waist. But it really should be just, I'm just wearing clothes above the waist and clothes below the waist. There shouldn't really be any sexual thing to it or gender thing to it. It should be just clothing. So it could be just clothes. You know, a man just wearing what he wants to wear, and it should be accepted. And we're working on that. You know, it's getting better, but it's not going to happen overnight. You know, if people don't accept it, then I think they're the ones that have the problem by not being able to open their minds and not put things in a box or something. So,
Mark Bryan has a front row seat to a show by Jeanne Friot, a young feminist designer, and he's not the only one to like what he sees.
I love coming to shows and really getting involved. I don't like it when there's a sort of distance and sometimes even a contempt by the fashion world towards certain types of people. With Jeanne, you feel totally included in what she's doing. And I think that for her, it's really a sort of activism. The same goes for her art, but you can sense that whoever you are, say me, or my friend who I came with, Isaac Harris, who's nothing like me, who's got a different body shape, different skin color, who's got different tastes in fashion, well, we both felt included by this collection. I think that's really rare. It's rare to feel that included. You know, not just like an observer. You really feel like an actor, and I think that's what she's asking of us, that we become actors in this new way of doing fashion.
Jeanne, What is a story today?
Today it's the story of the Little Mermaid. We go back to the original story by Anderson and we rewrite it. So we reread the story of the Little Mermaid, which is in fact a declaration of love addressed to his former benefactor, a relationship that back then would simply have been impossible, and we realized just how significant this story was in helping shape her queer story, and how in the Disney version there's the evil Ursula, the witch who at that time was inspired by the iconic drag performer Divine. And there's also the question of how I grew up with all these stories written by people from my community without ever realizing it, but while identifying with it all nonetheless. And also how we can really ramp up the visibility of our stories, how we can put them center stage. And the Little Mermaid is also fundamentally a mythological figure who's half human, half fish, a figure of desire, so seductive she shipwrecked the boat. There's just so much symbolism there, linked to this idea of a voice that carries meaning, that enchants. I found her to be a very interesting figure to look into. And how should we approach this figure today? How can we depict her? How can we make her relevant to a contemporary audience?
Fashion is, of course, a big business, but sometimes it's worth remembering that it's also an art form, capable of being inspired by literature just as much as the latest online trends.